Looking from afar at the former Carlingford railway station, we can see work on the Parramatta Light Rail well and truly underway. The New South Wales government is currently working to convert Sydney's most underused railway line, the Carlingford Railway Line, into a light rail. Before its closure for conversion in 2020, the line ran from Clyde, a small station near-ish to Parramatta, north to Carlingford. They're hoping that the conversion will fix the line's historically low patronage, turning it from heavy into light rail. But if we rewind the clock to over half a century ago, in the mid-1960s, we'll learn something telling. When land for housing started opening up around Carlingford Station that decade, massive amounts of land were specifically left around Shirley Street. Why? Well, the biggest flaw in the Carlingford line is that it ended in the middle of nowhere, not joining up with any other lines on its northern end. It wasn't meant to end here forever. In the early 2000s, it was going to be extended just 3 kilometres to Epping Station on the Northern Line. So why was this link never built? Today, we're going to explore the history of the proposed Parramatta to Epping Rail Link, a fateful decision 19 years ago that doomed the proposal, and why exactly the Parramatta Light Rail has condemned the long-awaited proposal into a link that will probably never be built. Welcome to Building Beautifully. Before I continue, do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And do check out the rest of my channel, your go-to YouTube destination for all things city planning, after the video. In 1896, the Carlingford Line was fully opened between Carlingford, a small suburb in Sydney's northwest, and Clyde, a small station just east of Parramatta, now Sydney's second biggest city. Stations were located in Carlingford, Telopea, Dundas, Rydalmere, Camellia and Rose Hill. The line was always very underused, easily the quietest line in all of Sydney. Due to this, the line only operated as a shuttle service between Clyde and Carlingford in its last years. Why was it so quiet? Well, not only did the line not link up with any other lines, but it consisted of only a single track for its entire length north of Rose Hill, which severely impacted its potential capacity. Plus, it crossed over Parramatta Road, one of the busiest highways in Sydney, via a level crossing. Station locations were far from ideal as well. The line dumped passengers at Clyde, a small station in an industrial suburb that not very many people would actually be headed to, forcing passengers to annoyingly transfer there to get to Parramatta or Central. Camellia was located in an industrial suburb with a grand total of 0 residents, making it one of the least used stations in all of Sydney. Rydalmere Station was located right next to Western Sydney University, but without a direct pedestrian link, walking between the two proved quite circuitous. Finally, Carlingford Station itself was located pretty much in the worst possible location in Carlingford, far away from Carlingford Court and Carlingford Village, the main shopping centres of the suburb, all the way at the bottom of a very steep hill, separating the station from the shopping centres. Take it from a local, I've lived only a 5-minute drive away from Carlingford train station my entire life, and yet I only ever used the line once. The logical thing to do for years was to extend the Carlingford line to Epping. Epping is only about 3 kilometres away, and by extending it, it would likely increase patronage on the little-used line, by improving east-west accessibility in the Carlingford-Parramatta area. I'll touch more on that later. So, land was set aside in the 60s, allowing for the line's potential extension. Proposals came and went over the years, but nothing serious arose until 1998, when the Action for Transport 2010 report was released, which included many rail proposals, including the Parramatta Epping Chatswood Rail Link, or peckerel, peckerel, peckle, look, whatever. Why link Parramatta to Chatswood? Well, up until that point, pretty much anyone who lived north of the Parramatta River and west of Chatswood had only one way into the city, down the Northern Line, before joining up with the Western Line at Strathfield. Pretty much everyone in this part of Sydney had no choice but to share this small section of track to enter Sydney CBD. Problematic? You bet. Congestion? Definitely. The peckerel was proposed to counter this problem. People from Sydney's growing northwest region would now have an alternate way to enter Sydney CBD via the lesser used North Shore Line. Brilliant. And even better, its route would make use of the underused Carlingford Line, fixing the line once and for all. Starting at a dive structure just east of Westmead, the line would arrive at new underground platforms at Parramatta Station. From there, the line would travel in tunnels all the way to the existing Carlingford Line just before Camellia. The existing Camellia and Rose Hill stations would be demolished, replaced with a new station somewhere in the middle. The line would then follow the existing Carlingford Line, which would be duplicated from 1 to 2 tracks. Stations would be kept at Rydalmere, Dundas and Telopia, before arriving at a new underground station at Carlingford. From there, the line would go straight to Epping in a tunnel, and then on to Chatswood. The proposal was actually really smart. It would solve two of the inconveniences of the Carlingford Line. Firstly, it would start at Parramatta, a far more important station than Clyde. And more importantly, it would finally close the 3-kilometre missing link between Carlingford and Epping. In November 2002, construction of Stage 1, the Epping to Chatswood link, commenced, ultimately opening in 2009. But
the train that's heading from Chatswood to Epping, which was actually originally meant to go all the way to Parramatta.
Stage 2, the Parramatta to Epping section, never started construction because of a fateful decision 19 years ago. In August 2003, Minister for Transport Services Michael Costa officially delayed the project indefinitely, citing an expected low patronage and high cost. You see, as I mentioned earlier, the link would help people in the northwest enter the city via Chatswood instead of Strathfield. Trouble is, only the Epping to Chatswood part was really needed to do that. No one was really going to go from Parramatta to the city via Chatswood, because that route was clearly far longer than the direct route via Strathfield. The peckerel was ultimately about fixing heavy patronage on the northern and western lines. Unfortunately, it wasn't about fixing the Carlingford Line. And so, the Carlingford Line was forced to remain a pretty useless line ending in the middle of nowhere. For years afterwards, residents around the Carlingford Line patiently waited for something to be done about their line. Fortunately, stub tunnels were built in the Epping to Chatswood Rail Link, in case the Carlingford Line was ever actually extended to Epping as initially planned. Unfortunately, in 2011, the North West Rail Link, later the Sydney Metro North West, commenced construction, making use of those very same stub tunnels. That made it far harder for the Carlingford Line to join up with Epping. Up until 2020, there was still hope for the Carlingford Line to be extended to Epping one day, but then the death knell sounded.
The Parramatta Light Rail is being billed as a game changer to better connect the western suburbs, but there are a lot of people sad to see the historic Carlingford to Clyde rail line shut down.
The Carlingford Line was officially closed in January of 2020 to be converted into a light rail as part of the Parramatta Light Rail project. With the light rail opening expected next year in 2023, there is now no chance of the line being turned into heavy rail ever again. In other words, the Carlingford Line will never be extended to Epping, at least not as a train line. Now, you might be wondering why this is such a problem. The light rail project actually leaves the former Carlingford Line just south of Camelia's station, with many stops around Parramatta, before arriving at Parramatta station itself. This completely bypasses Clyde, removing the unnecessary transfer, making the route to Parramatta far more direct and far more convenient. But a problem remains. Let's look at this zone I've drawn, right in the middle of Carlingford. Currently, people on the east side of this zone are close enough to the Northern Line, allowing them to readily get to big commercial centres such as Epping, Macquarie Park, Chatswood and then eventually Sydney CBD. On the west side of the zone, when the Parramatta Light Rail opens, people will be able to get to Parramatta more easily than ever before, easily transferring there to get to Sydney CBD. So everyone can get around easily. Problem is, it's next to impossible to actually cross this zone. People on the west side of the zone will have great difficulty readily getting to rapidly growing commercial hubs in Epping, Macquarie Park and Chatswood. People on the east side of the zone will have great difficulty readily getting to Carlingford, and then on to the quickly growing Parramatta. It's not so bad in the zone itself, but it's not great either. All of that because of a 3-kilometre missing link. The Carlingford-Epping area of Sydney is one of its fastest growing areas, an area where many high-rises have popped up quickly over the past decade, dramatically changing its skyline. The area is a bustling commercial hub, busy and thriving. And yet, in such a fast-growing region, it still remains pretty much impossible to travel across this invisible zone. When the Petrol was planned, it was all about improving access to Sydney CBD. And, well, the part of it that was built does do that. But it was too focused on suburb city travel, instead of cross-regional travel. Getting across this region is hard, and the Parramatta to Epping Rail Link could have fixed that, even if that wasn't its primary intention. Instead, residents of an area quickly being covered with massive high-rise apartments now somewhat struggle to travel across the region. Because of the lack of a heavy rail link, frequent buses are forced to run along Pennant Hills Road, linking Epping with Parramatta. And obviously, buses are slower and less efficient than trains. Extending the Carlingford Line to Epping would have fixed this problem, dissolving the zone once and for all. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. Now, at least access to Parramatta is being greatly improved on the west side of the zone, with the light rail. Unfortunately, crossing the zone to and from Epping will still remain a problem. Converting the line to light rail is an improvement, yes, but it's the cheaper and less efficient fix. Extending it as a heavy rail line may have been more expensive, but it would have made the line a far more efficient people mover. Now you're probably wondering, why don't we just extend the light rail to Epping? Well, there's not really any space on any roads in Carlingford for light rail to run, so it would have to be tunnelled. With the amount you'd have to spend on a tunnel, you can pretty much only justify that by using heavy rail, which can move more people. Check out RM Transit's video in the top right on that topic for more. And, well, heavy rail is clearly not going to be used again on the Carlingford Line. Interestingly, as detailed in my Future Sydney Metro 2056 video, again in the top right, there are actually still plans for a Parramatta to Epping Rail Link, in the form of a metro. But who knows what route it will take. Obviously, it can't take the same route as the Carlingford Line anymore. Perhaps it could take a more northerly route via North to Parramatta, roughly following Pennant Hills Road to Carlingford, and then on to Epping. Anyways, regardless of its possible route, the line is a long way off from being constructed. Indeed, there's unfortunately a good chance it may never be built. A small 3-kilometre missing link between Carlingford and Epping is pretty easy to forget when there's entire regions of Sydney that have no public transport at all. It's just unfortunate that that missing link isn't such an important and growing part of Sydney. The area has quietly lost out for years, And because of fateful decisions over the past 20 years, it's an area that will probably continue to lose, at the mercy of the invisible zone.
If you like this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.